Good afternoon, welcome to Indycar on Monday the 27th of August 2018. I'm Gordon Ross. In today's news we look at stories of sexual harassment by politicians. They seem to be all the rage this week in Scotland anyway, with the strange 5 years late allegations against former First Minister Mr Salmond. Now, in light of these allegations against the former First Minister, I thought I would have a look and see what had been happening at the other end of the country with sexual harassment by MPs and senior politicians. And what did I find? But at the beginning of this year, in the spring of this year, there was a dossier handed to the parliamentary authorities detailing over 36 individual MPs, ministers and top Tory aides who were being accused by their junior members of staff of sexual harassment, of inappropriate touching, sexualised texting and other forms of harassment by senior Tory politicians. And that's 36 MPs, senior aides and top Tory politicians. Now, interestingly, these 36 people who were on that dirty dossier, which was given to the parliamentary authorities and leaked to some of the tabloid press at the beginning of the year, that dossier has disappeared. It has mysteriously vanished into thin air, along with all the other types of child sexual abuse allegations, of corruption allegations, and all kinds of other allegations of any malfeasance or bad behaviour or illegal or criminal activity by the Tories. It just disappears into a black hole as soon as it appears. So just as that series of allegations against 36 Tory politicians and their senior aides was being made, suddenly it disappears and up pops 5 years late a single allegation against one SNP leader. A wee bit of a coincidence. Remember I said to you the other day it was a bit strange, the timing of this, about how the allegations concerning Alex Salmond had only been made at the beginning of this year, just after the law which made it impossible for him to defend himself came into effect. And who do we blame for leaking it? Well, it has to have come from the British-run civil service, because remember, the civil service is not run by the Scottish Government. It's called the Scottish Government, but it's actually the British Government which is supposed to be supporting the devolved Parliament of Scotland. However, that aside, it seems to me that the balance is tipped very much in favour of the 36 Tory MPs who were alleged, and I say alleged in this document, to have sexually harassed juniors, and in one case a 19-year-old intern who was going for a job with the Tory MP who received a whole lot of sex from the MP. In other words, sexualised texts including imagery. Now, this to me strikes me as being ultimate in hypocrisy and mudslinging. The Tories, dirty up to their eyebrows in filth and sleaze down south, are casting around for ways of discrediting anybody in the SNP that they can find, and who better to go after than the former First Minister himself. Now, Alex Salmond has been accused of something, and there is a process of law which has to take place. The First Minister had signed up to the changes in the law, and therefore the law has to take its course. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is not able to do anything about that. She was in favour of laws which made it easier and made it safer for particularly women to come forwards when they have been sexually abused or harassed or in any other way mishandled or misused by a senior employee or worker or a co-worker. Now, that is necessary to make it safe for women to come forwards, and there's no problem with that. Even Alex Salmond doesn't have a problem with that. This is not an issue about the law, and it's not an issue even about Alex Salmond himself. It's an issue about the timing of these allegations. Why did they wait 5 years? Why did they wait till exactly the point when this law came into being to make these allegations? Did they know the law was going to change? Well, they must have done, otherwise they wouldn't have made the allegations at the moment they did. I'm not saying the allegations are unfounded, I'm not saying anything about the allegations, but why make them right at the moment when the law changes? Why make them at the point where the person who's being accused of this crime, of this misbehaviour, is unable to defend themselves and unable to mount any kind of a defence in his own name. Well, I think it's obvious, isn't it? It's to create a sideshow. It's to take attention away from the 36 Tory MPs in Westminster who are committing worse offences than that down there, whose document and dossier accusing them of all this has just disappeared into the shredder, been burned, buried, or in other words, just swept under the carpet and will never be seen again in Westminster. So the sleaze, the deprivation, the harassment, the sexual harassment of young people in Westminster is going to continue unabated. Nobody will be punished for that. But Alex Salmond is to be demonised in Scotland by this action, this carefully timed action, all right? Carefully timed so that it would cause the maximum amount of damage to him, to his family, and to the SNP. Has it done that? I don't think so. I think what's actually happened is, despite the fact that Mr. Salmond has been accused of all of this, I don't think anybody who knows him really believes any of it. And I'm pretty certain that most of the independence campaigners, no matter what they think of Mr. Salmond, are not buying it either. It's too much of a coincidence. It's too carefully coordinated, and it is too transparently obvious that it's been timed to cause the maximum amount of damage. It would surprise none of us, I think, if at the end of the day, after months of fighting over this and going through court actions and so on, that whoever it was who made the allegations will simply withdraw them and disappear, and we'll never know who they were. And Salmond will have been left with this little bit of mud stuck to him because of this smear campaign. That's what smear campaigns are all about. Those of you who know Craig Murray, who used to be the UK ambassador to, if I remember correctly, it was, I'm trying to think if it's Kurdistan or Turkmenistan, but one of the stands anyway. He was a British diplomat, and he realised that the British government were using their aircraft to fly people to places to be tortured. And he knew about this, he found out about it, and he published a book called Murder in Samarkand about his experiences and about the dirty tricks that the British government were up to, and how they took part in rendition flights with the Americans to take prisoners from Iraq and have them tortured in other places. When he exposed that, Craig Murray was also attacked in the same way that Salmond was. Sexual allegations were made against him, allegations which were terrible actually, and absolutely destroyed his career, his confidence. He had a mental breakdown because he couldn't fight against them. He was not able to fight against them. He was not allowed to know who had made the allegations or what they were. He was just simply being smeared with mud, smeared with filth, because the British government saw that he was leaking a secret about rendition flights and people being tortured and the British collusion in it. Craig Murray wrote an interesting article in the media yesterday describing his experience as being similar to what happened to Alex Salmond, similar also to what happened to Julian Assange, and similar in some ways to what happened to Tommy Sheridan many years ago with the British press. People who the British state do not like, people who tell tales on them, who expose them for what they're really doing, get this treatment. They get mud thrown at them, they get allegations made against them. And this is a weapon of war as far as the British state is concerned. It's soft power. They find a way of getting somebody to come forward with a complaint made at just the appropriate time that causes just the amount of damage that they want. It's an old political trick that goes back centuries. Has it done any damage to the cause? No. If anything, it's strengthened the entire independence movement even more than it was before. We're even tighter now than we were. The good thing about the independence movement, and something which the British state will never understand, is the fact that it's not because we have leaders that we're strong. We're strong because we don't have leaders. We have no leaders. We have lots and lots of people who do lots of different things. We have many activists who speak at public rallies. We have people who organise marches. We have people who organise bridge flag-waving events. We have people who organise 500-mile walks around Scotland to raise money. We have people who perform music for the cause. We have people who write poetry for the cause. We have people who write columns for the cause. We have people who do everything for independence. Everything that they can do, they do it. And none of us is a leader. None of us leads this movement. We're all just part of it. We do what we do best. We use our talents to further the interests of Scotland and to try and take Scotland out of this corrupt, filthy, depraved, I suppose is a better word, depraved Westminster, which is fully corrupted, full of sleaze. Everybody's out for what they can get. Everybody's greedy. Everybody's working their expenses. Everybody is misusing the young members of staff in their employment. And the Tory party seems to attract the most horrible personalities I've ever seen. The most deviant, the most sexually unpleasant people, and the most controlling and manipulative people in the world seem to populate that party and get into positions of power and make sure that they write the rules so that they don't get blamed for any of the things that people are alleging. In the meantime, in Scotland, our system in our parliament is clear. Anybody who is accused of anything will go through the process. The files will not be lost. They'll not be swept under the carpet. The case against Alex Salmond will be carefully examined in the full public glare of normal procedures. Everybody will know what the result is. Nobody will get let off with anything. And none of it will be swept under the carpet, disappeared, lost, burnt, or otherwise eaten by the family dog, as is the case with all kinds of British allegations in the Westminster Parliament. In Scotland, we do things right. Alex Salmond is a victim of a new system which has never been used before against somebody. And he is being used as a guinea pig, and he's being used as a, he's being made an example of. His head is being stuck on a pike and stuck over the gates of Parliament in Holyrood to say, this is what will happen to you if you try to lead another rebellion against English rule in Scotland. It's basically that. It's do not stick your head above the parapet or we will have you as well. If you don't want what's happening to Alex to happen to you, then shut up and get back in your box and stop causing trouble for Britain in its moment of glory as we Brexit from the EU. Which leads me to my last point today, which is that the British government announced in the Daily Telegraph one of the most ridiculous things that they have ever come up with, which is a thing called, believe it or not, a sovereign satellite. Yes, a sovereign satellite. It's not a satellite with a little crown on it, with Elizabeth Regina engraved on the side of it. Nope, it's not that. It's because the European Union has said to the UK that its new GPS satellite system, which consists of 36 very expensive satellites positioned around the globe, which is going to be used for GPS, for satellite tracking, for cars, for boats, for ships, for planes, for everybody, instead of the American system we use now. But the Europeans have said if Britain leaves the EU, then Britain becomes a security risk to that system. And therefore, the British state will not be allowed to use the new European GPS satellite system. So the British government, in a fit of pique, has put out a story that they are going to spend £100 million looking at how they can build their own satellite navigation system. Now, it should be pointed out that it takes years, up to 20 years, and perhaps about 30 to 40 rocket launches to put up enough geostationary satellites into orbit to create a network that equals the Americans or the Europeans or even the Chinese who are putting up their own GPS satellite constellations. So the British government is basically saying that it's going to spend trillions of pounds building its own satellite navigation system for one island. Just for one tiny island in the Atlantic, they're going to spend billions of pounds when they've already got a GPS system which we're using at the moment, which belongs to America and which we all use every day of our lives anyway for free, virtually. So what this story is about is literally just a piece of fluff, a bit of nonsense in the papers to say, oh well, if you're not going to let us use your satellite, we'll make our own satellites, nya, nya, nya. But the Europeans know that this is a complete bluff. The British government's never going to spend trillions of pounds building a satellite navigation system for an island that's only 600 miles long. It would be stupid when the American system already serves you virtually for nothing. The European system, will be accessible to us. But if we are a security risk, we may not be able to access all of its features, that's all. But no, the British government's got to come out with some nonsensical statement about creating its own satellites and having... There we go, sorry about that. Got a bit of a problem with my phone here. You know the little sucker that sticks to the window? That just fell off there. I take that as a sign from God that it's time for the Tories to stop trying to lie to people about their satellites and their sat-nav systems. Because plainly, we don't need another sat-nav system. We've got one already in operation above us at the moment. It belongs to the American military, and we've all been using it for free for about the last 20 years anyway. So I don't think it's going to make any difference. Anyway, I have to get going. It looks like I'm going to have to buy myself a new phone mount as well, because this one I think has just about had it. But anyway, have a think about this. Remember, the business with Alex Salmond will run its course. You know, if it goes to trial or goes to court, we'll find out the truth eventually. Whatever the truth is, we'll find out what it is. It won't be hidden. It won't be hidden like it is in Westminster. When something bad happens to Tory politicians, where they've done something evil, perverted and nasty to some young person in their employment, they get off with it. Nobody gets to see what they've been up to. It will be swept under the carpet. The files are lost, and it carries on as usual. The cesspool as Westminster just keeps on going. In Scotland, we'll see this through to the end. Alex Salmond, I'm pretty certain, will be exonerated. I don't think he's done anything, and I think that most of us don't believe he's done this. I mean, I don't know the man personally, and people are capable of all sorts of crazy things, but I honestly don't believe for 1 second that Salmond is guilty of what he's been accused of in this. But time will tell. We'll see what happens as this process goes on. But let's not be deflected by it. Salmond wasn't in the picture anyway for the next referendum. Talk of him coming back into it is just hearsay as far as I can tell. He might have mentioned that he might come back into politics, but he's perfectly happy with his own TV show. He's got his own life to live, and he was doing fine without politics. So I think it's not going to hurt the independence campaign one bit. There are somewhere in the region of 2.4 million people now probably in favour of voting yes at the next independence referendum. The last actual proper poll that was done was a Survation poll, and that showed that 51.2% of Scots now favour independence. There you go. That's why the British media and the British state are getting so worried. And that's why they're starting to lash out, because we have passed the 50% button again. And this is what happened the last time, do you remember? Before the independence referendum, we got to 51%. Suddenly we had the vow, remember? Now we're at 51.2% just now. Suddenly Alex Salmond is getting attacked in the press. So watch out for the next series of dirty tricks. We've got them on the run. We're winning the battle of hearts and minds at the moment to get Scotland out of this corrupt union and to have a normal country again, which has normal relationships with Europe, normal relationships with everybody else, and that is neutral and no longer starting wars in the Middle East and no longer sending young people over there to die for the sake of the petrodollar, basically. Anyway, that's the end of today's show. More food for thought, I think. But just remember, 36 Tory MPs and their cohorts in London accused of sexual harassment. And that has disappeared into nowhere. Just disappeared. Salmond, in the meantime, his court case will run through and we'll find out what happened at the end of it. But I bet you he's vindicated, and I also bet you that people who made the allegations against him will vanish. We'll soon see. Bye for now.